Hello everyone, welcome to the last session of the first day of Update Conference Prague 2022. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I'm really thrilled when I see this large hall to be crowded. Even there are some people who are still coming into the hall. It's a really nice feeling for me as one of the organizers of this conference. And it's my great pleasure to have here 5 members of the .NET team who are working in Microsoft here in Prague, in Czech Republic. So welcome, my guests. And first we can start with some introductions, so you will be able to see who these people are and where, on which parts of .NET they are working on. After the introduction, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, so you can just raise your hand, and our colleague in the yellow T-shirt, she will come to you and give you the microphone so you can ask your question. And if you are watching us online, you can also post the questions to the web interface, and if there are any questions coming from online, I will read them here on the mic, so our guests will be able to answer them. So ask us anything, and at first I will start by the introduction. So can you start? Let's start from, what side is that? Right side, so from that side.
Hi everyone, I am from Mono WASM assembly team, and we got the instruction to tell you where would you run our code if you ever touched .NET. So basically, when you are running a Blazor application, but not this one on server, a client side, that's where you are running the code our team is touching. Or if you are using these new WASM browser templates, we're also working on that. And mostly I have been working on the debugger. That's the part of WASM I started with when I joined 1 year ago. But I'm also observing the work of my colleagues, so I hope that I will be able to answer some more broad questions, we'll see.
So Vlada, Shubina, working for Microsoft for already 2 years. So our team is focusing on developer experience and tooling. In particular, we are working on the bits of .NET SDK and MS Build. So yeah, each time you run .NET New, probably it touches the code that I wrote for the last 2 years, as well as you're building the project. This is a code that my team is working at, as well as if you're using Visual Studio and trying to create a new project, that's again template engine. And if you're building your project, that goes to MS Build.
Hello, I'm Vita Karas. I've been in Microsoft for I think 17 years now. My team owns it's called application model, but it's basically the different types of apps you can build. We own the hosting, so like starting the runtime, the assembly loader, and we also own trimming, making apps smaller. And recently we started to own the native AOT stack, which is to build the apps into native executable. And my code runs pretty much every time you touch .NET, because the hosting layer, which half of it I wrote, is the thing which actually starts the process. So that makes me a bit nervous.
Hello, my name is Přemek. I've been with Microsoft for over 6 years, and half of that with .NET. I work on the engineering services team, which means we provide tooling and infrastructure for building, testing, shipping .NET. So every time someone opens a pull request on GitHub, all these hundreds of builds that run for every commit and run all those tests, that's us. We also provide common tooling so that every repo is roughly the same, similar. And lastly, I am personally working on a project. It's called .NET VMR, Virtual Monolithic Repo, and I just tried to announce it before update, but I just did it an hour ago because we were waiting for some confirmation. And you can find it on the .NET announcement. It's about putting .NET in one repo that you can build right now on Linux only, but soon everywhere else. And everything is there, all the code for .NET basically.
Hello, I'm the last, as you can see on the slides. I'm not the engineer. I'm Marek Šafář. I'm one of the engineering managers, also working on .NET, if you can say that. And I'm leading a couple of teams here in Prague, working on different pieces of .NET, running stuff like Blazor, Maui. I also have teams outside of Czech Republic, also kind of contributing to pieces of the runtime. Not sure I can say anything. I kind of contributed to the code recently, so I think we can skip that one for me, right?
But I heard some rumors that recently you broke some build or something like that.
All right. So I did land the code, but that was more by accident. So I did land the change. It was about a week ago. But because I'm manager, I knew that I will break the build, right? So I asked already the engineers to fix it for me once I landed. So if that counts, that I'm in.
Great, thank you for this lovely introduction. So if there are any questions in the audience, just raise your hand and you will get the microphone. It's a bit asynchronous operation. You have to wait until the microphone is coming to you. Okay, so before there are some questions in the room, I have prepared one question. You are all working for Microsoft in Czech Republic, so and maybe not all the people know what exactly Microsoft is building here in the Czech Republic. So can any of you just briefly tell us what parts of .NET or any other Microsoft products are like being created here in Czech Republic?
Okay, so I can take this one. I don't know how much time I have because there is actually quite a lot we are now building in Prague. So obviously .NET is one of the pieces, right? We have a mixture of the stack being built in Prague. As Ilona said, we are building low-level stuff like debuggers. We are building runtime pieces like Chaotic compiler. We are building also the stack pieces like, F# tooling, different support infrastructure. Vlada mentioned the SDK part, the MS build. So I think there is definitely significant input or influx from the Prague on the .NET. And if you go beyond the .NET, there is definitely growing number of the teams, starting from teams, more on the backend side, Skype, Dynamics, Identity, and as I said, I could go on and on and on.
So it seems pretty huge. Who can you please raise a hand? Who knew that Microsoft was building so many great things in the Czech Republic? Who knew that before? Okay, so few people raised their hands. Great. Okay, so another question maybe before there are some. Oh, there is a question in the audience, in the middle.
He's not. No. So, sorry. Starting off with a kind of a hard question fit. I'm already sorry for my question, I think. But with the release of .NET 7, there were a lot of hosting improvements as well, for a bit of performance improvements. And I'm curious on what was the hardest part that you guys improved on .NET 7 to make it faster.
So, raise your hand who saw the famous performance blog post which broke mobile browsers. Okay, not that many, it's surprising. So one of the architects on the team, Steven Taub, writes every release, he writes a blog post which is all about performance improvements, nothing else. And it's always getting bigger, so this year it's like 350 pages. So yeah, we wouldn't fit into the entire conference to discuss that whole thing. I personally don't actually know like anything specific. There are some great numbers there. You can take a look. I think that's the best resource to see like perf improvements in various areas. There is another one for ASP.NET which David Fowler wrote. I haven't seen that one yet, but I know that he wrote it. So that would be just for ASP.NET. Yeah. You want to add something?
Yeah, I would say that probably for each feature we build, we measure the performance and trying to be to make it at least not worse than it was before. So part of my team was working in the MS Build performance area. They were working a lot on MS Build server. Unfortunately, it's not enabled by default in .NET 7, but you can try it out with a feature flag. It improves significantly incremental builds. So by spinning up the server, which remembers the previous run and saves time on this. Yeah, as I mentioned, there were a couple of issues on several platforms. That's why there was a late decision to disable it by default, but you still can try it out by enabling it and giving us the feedback in MS Build repo.
And also, as far as I know, we enabled measuring the performance by adding better profiling, because now we changed to native AOT, so we actually can perform the runtime startup. Before it was impossible because the runtime, we would have to actually profile something that was not launched yet. And now, when we have another runtime in native AOT, we can use it for profiling our runtime startup, and it, for a long run, it will get us more improvements in our performance for sure.
Hello. Over the past few years, .NET and Microsoft's development tools as a whole have gotten a lot more cross-platform friendly. And I wanted to ask, what chunk or proportion of the .NET team actually develop using Macs and Visual Studio for Mac? Or, oh, the manager. Okay.
On work, I'm developing Windows, but for my personal project, I'm developing on Mac.
I'm a Windows person, but on my team we have 2, maybe 3 people. I know at least 2 who are basically full-time on Mac. And I know that a lot of other people on the runtime team, which I'm part of, also use Macs as their like daily machines. We have also people who actually use Linux as their primary box, which I find hard because the corporate environment is not very friendly for that. But yeah, I mean, yes, the truth is like majority of people still work on Windows, but we have like, I don't know, 20% maybe. On the Mono side, it's actually more. Most Mono people work on Macs.
Yeah, I've been working on the infrastructure that tests Android and Apple devices for MAUI, and I've been working a lot with the Xamarin team, and everyone was there on Mac, it seems. I was also doing third time I was doing Windows and sometimes Linux.
I don't think we have an exact number, but it's definitely growing number, right? So the developers are either working on multiple machines or multiple systems, right? So it's no longer like, you know, I have this one setup, that's where I'm developing. It's more like, do you want another one? Do you want a third one? Or are you happy with the 4, right? So It's basically mix, and it also helps us to bootstrap and sort of test the tools internally better. But good question.
Maybe it's also good to ask the audience, how many of you are developing on a Mac? Okay, not so small number of people. I would guess like maybe 10% or something like that. Is there anyone who is developing .NET on Linux? Okay. Also, few people. Good, good. So it's definitely not Windows only. Of course, Windows is still most popular, but it is possible. And when I see in my company also, like we have 3 or 4 people working on Linux more than on Windows. Some people work exclusively on Linux. So it's good that .NET get coverage for all the platforms. Is there someone who is who has microphone already? In the okay, good. So
Try. With .NET 7 being out, it's a nice milestone reached. But I'm wondering, what's the next thing you're excited about and looking forward? It's an early question, but I suppose you do have a roadmap and some of your own favorites.
So as I mentioned, we just released this monorepo. It's at github.com/.net/.net because there's .NET in there. And we are quite excited about this because it will simplify many things. For us, it will be much easier to release stuff, but for everyone else, it will be much easier to just clone the repo. For example, if some company has a bug, it's failing on some really weird runtime problem, it's hard for us to reproduce. So if they can clone this repo and reproduce it and give us steps, we can do it as well. It will also help us push .NET to more Linux distributions because they expect to get source, one tar of zip source, and they expect that if you give it to them, they should be able to build .NET from there. So that's for myself.
On my side, this is just like hundreds of small things, to be honest, which comes with the fact that most of the code I work with has been like has been there for a long time, and so it's just like hundreds of minor improvements. I can't think of anything big. Maybe native AOT, but it's shipped in 7, so. But it's a V1, so right, like it will probably have non-trivial changes going forward to get better at everything.
Yeah. Release time now is it's time to think about the next features we would be developing. Actually, on template engine side, in our template repo, we have a lot of issues marked with gathering feedback, and we are really looking towards the feedback of what would be the most useful for you. Like we have our favorites, like for example, I would like us really to invest to the template authoring tools, which will allow easier authoring of templates, maybe some CLI tools for this, MS Build tasks and so on. But yeah, that's my favorite. Yeah, but we definitely looking for a feedback.
I don't have anything prepared, sorry.
okay, so and the microphone is someone else. Okay, great.
It's not that it's moved, it's already public, but in alpha version, so we don't really recommend using it in any production. it's yeah, exactly, because you see in .NET we rely on the community a lot, and most of the feedbacks and improvements we are getting from community. And now we were able just to enable it that it's working in like test version, and we'll see how you will like it, what new patches will be able to release for the next couple of months. And we don't, I have no idea really when we will be shipping any newer versions, but for sure it's something we will use your feedback a lot in. So yeah, keep using it in your test applications, and we'll see about that.
So I think Ilona is definitely asking for feedback. So if you are the person who has experience with this workload, let us know. Let's talk to her immediately after this talk, and we can help you for sure. You know, it has been marked as experimental simply because we just didn't have enough confidence that that's exactly the shape and the format we want to go with. Right, so we are looking for more input and also some work on our side to really not to, let's say, impose some additional work on some people who commit to build the stuff on top of that without letting them know first, if that makes sense. I have to say, I'm not sure I follow fully the question. So I think, you know, if you ask us, then we will definitely recommend Maui. But I don't think that's exactly the answer you are looking for, right? So again, I didn't really get the question, but we can maybe take it offline, or after this, I'm happy to kind of talk to you about that specific problem or question.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, here in the front. Yeah, the microphone is on the way. Great.
Hi, do you have a feature that you, looking backwards, really regret shipping, or something that you really, really dislike maintaining?
.NET Framework, maybe?
Yes.
So which one?
Yes. Because I'm the owner of the assembly loader in the new .NET, I really, really don't like the assembly loader in the .NET framework, because they're slightly different, and trying to get things working the same way is basically impossible. So yeah, I don't like that one. And also subdomains, they're evil.
I have a question. Do you know something about stability of Skype? because I think it's worse and worse. And everybody from my colleagues, we have to restart it once or twice per day, I think.
I don't know how it ended up with me, but although the Skype partially runs, the backend runs on .NET, I think that's the only thing we know about the Skype. So unfortunately, I don't think we can really give any reasonable answer on why Skype is not satisfying and your experience is not great. So I think there's usually feedback on the Skype, so I would use that if you want to reach out.
Yeah, I know. I already suggested a feature to have a restart button here, but.
So back on that, I think the Skype team is also hiring in Prague, right? So if you would like to change it also from inside, then that's also another opportunity for you to go and try to help us from that angle.
Okay, but it's not considered like that, like that project.
I'm not aware of Skype being there.
Okay, thank you.
I think what we should make clear is that like all of us are from the .NET team, which is like, 50, maybe 60 people total in Prague. The rest of the developers in Prague is more like 1,000. So there's a lot of things we have absolutely no idea. And this is one of them.
So it's not quite true, I did work in Skype. I was looking where this question will go first. No, I don't think Skype is that. Skype has a lot of functionality that Teams is also sharing. For example, the functionality that allows you to call any number in the world, and it's just going to connect you through from Skype, is something that also Teams is building on. So there's a lot of overlap in the teams right now. They share more and more code. That doesn't answer your question, but that's my 2 cents of like, I don't think it's that.
Okay, I have one question from the online discussion, so let's switch the one controversial topic to another. And the question is about GitHub Copilot. There is probably another big thing released recently by Microsoft named Copilot. Are you using Copilot or something similar for your daily tasks, or what you think about this technology and where you see the future of writing code, basically?
I'm not using Copilot, but there's a similar technology which we use, I guess it's internal for now, in Visual Studio. That one is actually very cool, and I'm always surprised how like smart it is, because like 50% of the time it just basically finishes the line for me exactly as I would have written it. So that one I like. I don't know exactly whether that's Copilot, but I think they're related, so eventually they will get the same. There's a funny story about Copilot in our team that I've seen like a week ago. Somebody wrote like a very specific piece of YAML for like some infrastructure. And then Copilot suggested a piece of code there, which was actually including a username of one of our developers. And the story goes that he's the only one actually doing this thing ever. And so that's why it learned. And the funny part is that it was really like ugly code, which nobody wants to do. So, you know.
So I am using Copilot for almost a year now. I think it's amazing, honestly. It helps me fill out the boring parts. For example, if you're writing unit tests, you're writing mocking data, you're writing comments, you're writing error messages when you're putting in tracing or logging. It actually anticipates well what the error message would be. It puts in your variables. So for me, it's a huge lifesaver. I wouldn't rely on it in the sense like some people command, hey, give me a method for opening a file and writing something inside. I still don't rely on this, but it usually points you in the right direction, and then you can fill out the rest. So for me, I get goosebumps sometimes when I use it, and it knows what my test will look like, and I feel like I'm way too predictable, which maybe it's good, maybe not, I don't know, but I really like the technology.
We're not using GitHub Copilot, but we're using analyzers a lot. It helps us to maintain quite a good quality and clean code. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so my answer will be similar to Przemek's. I am using it, and yeah, maybe it's not that much scary as like, that's good that it's predicting what you're writing, because it seems that you're matching in the most like mainstream way of coding, so that people will have it easy to read it afterwards, right?
My question is related to Visual Studio. I've been using Visual Studio as my first IDE, so since I was 10, and I found it wonderful until I tried a new IDE, which I don't want to sponsor here. What do you use? And I think you use Visual Studio, yes, but do you have any plan to improve it? Any really nice feature that would make really the difference, Visual Studio compared to other IDEs? Because as of now, I really prefer the other IDE, and I switch to Visual Studio only when Azure pipelines are not working. So Visual Studio magically deploys the application to app service.
Yes, I'm using VS. My funny story about that is that I went, like, when I joined the runtime team, I went around the team asking everybody what they're using, and a minority was using Visual Studio. Most people were writing basically text editors, which I think changed recently. I don't have like magical answer for VS, but related to that, what I do like a lot is the improvements, especially in GitHub, where you can like open any repo in a web version of VS Code or similar, right? And especially code spaces. I don't know whether you've tried that, but that's like magic, right? I don't have to do anything. I don't have to build anything. It doesn't take an hour. It's right there. I can edit it, use it, close, forget about it, right? So yeah, that one I like. I know it's not exactly Visual Studio, but I know that behind the scenes, all the teams are like working together. So like the code editor is basically the same, right? Yeah.
Okay, I use Visual Studio daily. I really like it. I've been through many languages in my life, and I still feel like Visual Studio for C# is a really good experience in my view. I don't like VS Code for C#. If it's C#, I open Visual Studio. If it's anything else, I open VS Code. That's my workflow. I've seen people using either Visual Studio with ReSharper, but these days I don't think it's as necessary because Visual Studio is catching up a lot on, and sometimes it's even better for some things. So my own tip maybe that I can mention here is that I don't use any Git support in Visual Studio. I feel like it loads a little bit faster, but I handle Git outside. So just use it to edit C# and projects.
Okay, so for me, it's both Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. And actually, there is no reason behind it when I'm using which one. Like, I'm using Visual Studio Code for writing tests and Visual Studio for just writing our debugger proxy. And there is no, like, reason why I would do this in this pattern. but also our code spaces. When we enabled running tests on code spaces, now I can parallelize my work, and like my machine does not have to take all these computations, and I can have multiple code spaces switched on at the same time in different configurations, and it's really awesome.
Same as my colleagues using Visual Studio for C#, Visual Studio for Code for majority of other things. Don't feel like I need to switch to somewhere. When I started my career and years ago, I felt like, so I started with .NET, I felt like Visual Studio was not enough for me, and I was using some other very popular extension at that point of time, but now my opinion is that Visual Studio was able to kick up, and I don't need any extras on top of it.
Can I make another question? The other question is related to the process to decide the roadmap for .NET features. It's not clear for me how do you choose whatever this exact feature has to be included in the next release or not. And in that process, I would like to know how much influence has contributions from authors outside Microsoft, and also Microsoft interest in their products.
Okay, I can try this one. So it really depends what you consider feature, right? So the .NET is really a mix of, languages, runtimes, APIs. And if we look, for example, at the API, anyone can contribute feature, right? Anyone can submit the API. We are definitely actively supporting people to do that, and even walking them through how to do that. And then occasionally, well, maybe now, not occasionally, but more often, someone from community suggests this API, someone else picks up the implementation and actually lands an implementation, right? So we don't know what exactly will be in the next version, because it's influenced, who comes, what they implement. We have our own, obviously, strategy. We work on our features as well, but I think that, as Vitek mentioned, right, many of these are kind of spanning multiple releases, right? Like the native AOT. We shipped the version of native AOT in .NET 7, right? That's kind of first version, but it's not complete feature, right? We don't yet even know how many future releases it's still going to take us to really kind of get it to the point where we will be very happy with the shape, right? And then obviously we have features which are more like bugs, right? Someone is not happy with Skype, someone is not happy with Visual Studio, right? And comes that down to, I don't know, I'm missing this super feature in debugger, right? And that's something, again, which we work on maybe separately and then really kind of see the feedback comes that way, and we address that separately. So it kind of hopefully it answers the question, but it really depends where we are, what it is, and how complex the feature is.
Maybe this will be more like an ad, but what helps us is to get feedback. I know we repeat it everywhere, but that's actually the truth, because we only see what people tell us, and so that's either the VS feedback channel or GitHub, and there's like thousands of people who never talk to us, and so, it's hard for us to guess what they want, right? So if you have your favorite thing, make sure it's visible on GitHub, upvote, whatever, right? We actually look at those a lot. And so when I said we will do like 100 small things, one part of it is that we go through all the GitHub issues and basically like look at what people talk about frequently and try to do those, right?
What's interesting for me is that I think every other week, something like this on YouTube, there is this API review live talk where the architects of the language and of other parts, compiler, runtime, get together and they're discussing various proposals. So there are some really interesting things already. which are now being discussed. And to me, I think you can even have some input in the chat. I'm not sure.
Maybe I have a follow-up question to this. You mentioned several times that feedback is very important for you. So maybe what's the correct or what's the nicest way for us to give you the feedback? Just file a GitHub issue, or how to do it so it would be the most helpful for you?
So if it's a problem, GitHub issue for sure. And please do include a repro. We will likely not do anything about the issue. It just says it doesn't work. And I know everybody's smiling here, but you would be surprised how common that is. I think there's a lack in functionality in these online tools because there's no positive feedback. Basically, all feedback we get is mostly negative, as in like it doesn't work. And the only positive feedback is we actually can help that person. Then we sometimes get like a thanks, right? And so we don't see the, hopefully, thousands of people who have no issues and it just works magically for them. And so we have a slightly skewed view of the world, but you can change that, right? Like you can post an issue with your scenario or like how would you like to improve things and so on.
I guess when it comes to feature, again, GitHub would be the most appropriate place, and please include the background of your request, like just suggesting a couple of features doesn't allow us a lot of place for thought and a lot of like reasons on why you need to do it. Please explain how would you use it, what would be the benefit. If it can be quantitative, this would be very good, so we can consider, and like as better you, in my opinion, as better you explain your use cases, the more chances there would be that another people will pick up and suggest their use cases, how this feature can be helpful for them. And the more chances it would have to be developed. I would say like, yeah, mostly working again in template engine, but like half of the features that we did for .NET 7 originated from a user submitted issue.
Hey, hello. I have actually two questions. One is related to craning and mono, like whether you were able to reduce the size of the runtime for Blazor applications. And the other one is whether you tried the new lightweight threading, like green threads in .NET, and what do you think about that? Thank you.
So, if I remember correctly, the first question was about the size of the mono runtime for Blazor, right? So I think we are definitely still, I would say, on the journey where we try to reduce the size further. However, there are definitely limits, right? So I'm not sure whether we are exactly at the limits. I think we still have a way to go, but we are trying to focus elsewhere instead of just pure the runtime, right? There still needs to be some kind of logic in the runtime. So we are looking, what we can do, for example, around the globalization or some other pieces of the libraries or even up in the stack. So I hope that we will have another, let's say, noticeable savings in the next version of .NET, and it's definitely something we are looking at actively, and hopefully we will be able to continue that path even for kind of future versions, right? And the second question was green threads. Okay, so I think it's public, right? Is it public? Yeah, it's public. So it's something what we are experimenting with on multiple fronts, right? Blazor or WebAssembly or whatever you want to call it, it would be one of the fronts. There are some other areas. I think David Fowler is working on that publicly, if I'm not mistaken. So it's, as I said before, it's one of these projects where we are not yet sure where we will exactly end up, right? it's very likely it's going to span across multiple releases at the same time as well. So at this point, I don't think we can promise that it will, for example, ship in the next version. We would love to, right? But we need to do some homework first, and obviously, if there is anyone excited about green threads, help us, right? That work is at least partially public, and we are definitely looking for some ideas how to make .NET better in this regard.
It's one of the experiments. So kind of every year after we ship, so we just shipped .NET 7, there's a period of a couple of months where some people on the team do basically experiments, which is like, try what does it do, right? Like measure it, whatever. That's one of them. And yes, it's been, like Blazor has been looking at it, or wasn't runtime. The Coruscant runtime has also been looking at it. It's just an experiment. And it's a hard one. So like, I mean, it took Java 10 years to do it, right? So it's probably gonna take us a couple of years if you're really good, right?
Hi. But first, let me say that I think you are doing an amazing job in Microsoft regarding .NET, so thank you for that. I was just wondering about native AOT and what are the next steps, because I did not really follow the development closely, but mobile platforms and the WebAssembly for browsers use Mono. Is there some plans to basically align it to native AOT only? Or what's basically the future of Mono? Is it gonna die in a cold death, replaced by .NET?
No, the current plan is that for mobile devices, Mono is still the runtime to go with for us. For like server side and desktop, Core CLR is the right runtime. The AOT stacks are different, but we're looking and working on aligning them, that's for sure. But it depends on which like specific payload you discuss, so I can't really tell.
Yeah, I would like to maybe challenge you a little bit on the question, right? We hear that a lot, where people are asking, we should do X because that will do something, right? And I don't think we necessarily totally agree with the assumption that, going with native AOT will make stuff smaller, right? I think we are usually kind of looking at some other options if someone really wants to go small. So even if the native AOT would be considered for these workloads, I think it might not fit to everyone, right? So it's very unlikely that we will sort of kind of, change the course and suddenly convince everyone to go this way. We'll probably kind of look for a solution which works for everyone, or whatever that is.
We are definitely looking at like aligning the experiences, right? So like today when you build for Mono, AOT is done a certain way, and in MS Build it looks a certain way, and for native AOT it looks slightly different. So we definitely want to go into a place where they're kind of the same from your perspective. But like what goes on behind the scenes is, as Marek said, there's like big trade-offs to make, and native AOT is not the magical bullet.
Well, I think in more broader perspective, I would like to use Core CLR on mobile platforms because every runtime has its quirks. We have to be able to know about them. So basically aligning everything together would be a better experience for developers. And also, there was this like long-running joke that Mono is slow, whereas it is not true in recent releases, but still there are differences between Core CLR and Mono. And from the browser perspective, I think if we have one like ahead-of-time compiler, it will be better experience because it behaves the same way on desktop, mobile, and the browser.
I think, like specifically to the mono being slow and versus CoreCLR and things like that, there are scenarios where mono is actually much better because, for example, it has an interpreter, so it doesn't have to JIT even, it can just run the code, which is very good for things which you run only once. CoreCLR is more optimized for the throughput case right now on the server side. And so, you will see big differences there, obviously. But I wouldn't say that one is better or the other. It's literally mono is for the mobile targets, and running CoreCLR on Android, even though it might work, it probably wouldn't work well. It would require a lot of work to make it work as well as mono right now.
Yeah, I would just maybe add one more perspective. It's like, if you look at the history, we are really more trying to get the best out of each of the runtimes, right? So we are right now at the free runtimes. You can consider native to be actually different runtime, right? And I don't think that we are in the position where we say we want to have just one runtime because that will be awesome and everyone will be happy. Right? We are actually going the other direction. We are kind of trying to get the best for each of the use cases or workloads. And yeah, I get your point where, obviously multiple runtimes can cause some differences and some pain for developers. And we are trying to address that differently, right? Trying to make that kind of runtime piece really unique, smallest, and that might be our kind of future path, more likely than going into a single runtime.
What we are doing is we're trying to share as much between the runtimes as possible. So if you look at the source code, every release, we share more of the C# side of things between all the runtimes, right? So that it's really just the core parts which are different, but the functionality of the BCL and everything on top should be more or less the same because it's actually the same code.
I have one more question from the online chat. Do you know something about the recent release of .NET Framework for 8.1? Because it was released recently, but for the new .NET, the release cycle is pretty straightforward and very well known from all the slides. But for .NET Framework, do you know something about that?
As far as I know, and that is a big if, we release when it's necessary. So typically security. Sometimes we do small features, I know that, but it's all security related, right? In this day and world, we can't really have HTTP stack which doesn't support latest TLS, right? So we would do that as a feature effectively, but most of the time it's a patch release.
And maybe a follow-up question. Recently there was announcement that .NET Framework supports ARM architecture. So is it something that also here in Prague it was participated on, or it's something from some other country?
I didn't work on it directly, but I helped with certain things. But yeah, it was actually a big thing internally. I know it looks like a tiny checkbox that hey, another platform, but it took a lot of work.
Yeah, to answer your question, the work we do in Prague, it's, I don't know, I don't want to say what is the right word. I will skip that word, but we are trying to do more on the stuff around the core. So the stuff Vítek mentioned is, we touch the .NET Framework only if there is really some kind of very low level, some kind of, unique code. Otherwise, all the pieces which are developed in Prague are around the new versions of .NET.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. So is there any question in the hall?
Hello. Regarding .NET general availability, which was announced recently, and I'm just wondering whether or not you personally, since some of you probably contributed a lot to the actual development, would you consider the framework as a ready for industrial grade applications, for instance, such as the ones in the logistics, given the current state? And because I know that, at the very beginning, there was a bit troublesome launch of the whole platform. I have read some posts on Visual Studio magazine, so I would just like to ask you regarding your personal opinion. And I have tried it also once, and I haven't had, at the launch, I haven't had the most pleasant.
Sir, can I ask you to repeat the beginning because we missed the topic?
Okay, so I was wondering whether or not you personally would recommend to the broad audience that that .NET MAUI framework is ready for the development of some applications that are mission critical, like industry-grade applications, like your personal opinion.
Personal opinion, okay. So how do I do that? I think, it really depends. What do you think? Is it ready for you? Do you have bad experience, or did you encourage something?
I was developing Xamarin Forms 4.5, and only up until the release of Xamarin Forms 5, from that point onwards, I had a really nice experience. And before that, I was getting random errors from time to time. And since this is like a second release, technically, of .NET MAUI, I know it's a drastically different concept in regards with the Xamarin Forms. So it's from your perspective, since you have participated a little bit in the development, what is your current opinion? Because I haven't had that much of experience, because when you take a look, most people generally they post their negative opinions on Reddit, and rarely you see someone that posts positive experience. I mean, generally in life it's like that. So.
Okay. So just to start, well, the MAUI is something what is a little bit distant for us. What we develop in Prague, or what our teams do, we do the kind of low-end pieces of MAUI. We would love to have also the front-end piece of MAUI, maybe one day in Prague, but that's not how it is right now. As you rightly said, it's it's different concept compared to the Xamarin Forms, and we are definitely aware of, let's say, some necessary improvements on the tooling side, right? But I look, and I think I talked to David yesterday, and he also mentioned very nice thing where the team on the MAUI side is really focusing on squashing as many bugs as possible. I think he was able to share that. I think they fixed like 80% of the bugs which were reported in the past couple of months, right? So I think we are definitely now in the phase where we think the foundations are solid, right? But because the framework is so big, we are trying to, squeeze as many bugs as we can, and obviously the servicing which will come with this release will include fixes for all these problems people experience. So from that perspective, I think it's ready. If you hit some particular problem, you might not have a great experience, but we will definitely work on improving that, right? The MAUI for us is the framework we want to push forward, right? We are not really working on anything else beyond the MAUI as kind of, the unified UI stack. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Indeed, it does. And just another question regarding, for instance, on the new release of Android. Do you know whether or not you or your colleagues collaborate with Google or Apple when it comes to backporting some of the features that are platform specific? For instance, Material U back to .NET MAUI, or you simply wait that up until that sometimes passes, and then you observe the community feedback usually? Or do you have some kind?
So, let me put that. We tried, but it's very hard to contribute back to Apple, right? So I think we can skip that one. With regarding of the Android, I think it's more us trying, when we find a problem, right? the only way how we can fix it is the next version of the Android. Right? But you guys are already running, or your customers are already running the current version. So we definitely spend more focus on fixing the existing API version than trying to kind of fix it first for the next version. There is definitely feedback from us coming to the Google on the API, on the tooling side, on the other things as well. But again, it really depends what kind of intentions Google has. So it's not that we come to the Google and Google immediately fixes something for us. It doesn't work like that.
I work with the Xamarin team, and their schedule looks like that after every WWDC, they have a 2-month sprint where they try to somehow redo everything that was changed, because it's never announced and it drops on everyone. And there has been many drastic changes in the last few iOS releases, for instance, about permissions, things like that just broke a bunch of things that we were relying on. So I don't think there is any like heads up from them.
Okay, so our time is up. So thank you very much for nice questions. Thanks to our guests for very insightful answers. And after this session, there is an after party scheduled in front of this room. So enjoy some snacks, enjoy some dinner and beer or other beverages. And I hope that this day was useful for you, that you learned some new things, get some new ideas or inspiration. And we are looking forward to see you tomorrow at Update Conference Prague 2022. And also thanks to the online audience who has been with us, watching us through the digital channels, through the live streams. And we will see them tomorrow with their questions. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.